Welcome to the Hiscall Technology Podcast, where we are communicating tomorrow's business needs today. From just outside Nashville, Tennessee, join Hiscall as we discuss all things telephony, data, and infrastructure related to business leaders. Here we go.
Welcome to another episode of the Hiscall Technology Podcast. We're going to wrap up what has been a little mini-series of sorts with our sales team. Today in Podcast Studio C, I've got Tom and Patricia and Lori, three more of our sales executives. We're just going to let you learn a little bit about this team and who they are, and that way you'll be familiar with them. If you run into them, maybe you'll get an idea about them. And Tom and Patricia, they have been on the podcast before, so if you listen to the podcast, it'll be voices that you recognize. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Lori, you had a little bit of a drive. You had the longest drive to come in, so I know it was a big deal.
Yep, I'm glad to be here. It's about 2 hours, but no traffic, so it was good.
All right, so let's start. I know Tom and Patricia, you introduced yourselves a little bit before, but that's been a while. Let's start with Lori, and let Lori tell us a little bit about who she is, how long you've been at Hiscall, anything you want to share.
Well, I'm Lori McManus, and I've been with Hiscall now for right at 2 years. Been in the industry now for 27 years, the technology industry, so I'm proud to be at Hiscall. I actually was with another company and a partner with Hiscall, and when I came in and looked at the facility, I just knew that this was where I wanted to be, a Christian organization, and so I'm just happy to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. You live over in West Tennessee.
I
do. That's kind of the area that you're focused and covering, right?
Yes, sir. West Tennessee.
Patricia, tell us a little bit about you and maybe catch us up on what's going on.
All right, great, Chuck. Thanks for having me again. I'm Trisha Terry. I live in Dixon, Tennessee, and right where our headquarters at Hiscall is. And I've been with Hiscall for 13 years, and this was my first job in technology. So I had been staying home with my boys for 8.5 years before I started working at Hiscall. So I'd taken a break from the workforce. So coming back to Hiscall was a great experience for me because Gary let me start right where I was, just part-time, and then I moved into full-time, and I've been in sales ever since November of 2010.
November of 2010.
Yes.
That's pretty good. All right. Tom, what about you?
Been at Hiscall about 18 years.
You're the veteran in this bunch
Yeah,
right here.
so I've been here a little longer than the other two folks, but been in technology sales about 32. About 17 of those years, about almost half were spent in West Tennessee, and the other half have been in Middle Tennessee. So that's kind of the story. But I still have a lot of customers. I deal with customers all across the country, but most of them are in Middle and West Tennessee or have some tie to Middle or West Tennessee.
Right. Patricia's a native of Dixon County.
Yes, sir.
Lori, are you a native West Tennessean?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Madison County.
Madison County.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom, I never quite nailed down you're a native of, I thought you were a native of West Tennessee, but then it's Middle Tennessee. And
I was raised right outside of Nashville.
Okay.
So.
But you did live in West Tennessee for
I
a
lived
while.
in West Tennessee for 17 years. Yeah.
17 years.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
transferred. I started with AT&T in 91, and they were going to send me to Louisville and then turn around and send me to Jackson. So
That's a big difference.
Wow.
yeah, like Jackson better than Louisville. But
All right. Well, you each have been in sales. How would you say sales has changed?
I was like, if I can insert here, I would say that there are some things that have stayed the same. If you can take care of your customers and be responsive, they're always receptive to that. So that's kind of been my differentiator my entire sales career. So I had 11 years of selling institutional foods right out of college. And then my years that I stayed at home, I actually developed my own stationery company. And I was the maker and the seller of my product. So that was interesting through those years. But really, if you can be responsive to people, it's just that is what has stayed the same. And there have been years where pricing was the most important. Then people refocus on the relationship. It kind of ebbs and flows is what I have found. I thought with the pandemic and the change of the pandemic when we came back, it might create some a little more patience when they felt like everything had changed, and then when they kind of warmed back up to it. And I'm interested to see, I think we're still seeing the differences that's going to make in the industry as we move forward, as things settle out, and we get further and further away from that pandemic.
That's very interesting. You told something I didn't know, that you had this stationery company. I don't remember ever knowing that before.
Yes. It's called Eskimo Cards because ever since I was a little kid, my dad told me that I could sell ice to Eskimos. So that's what we named the card company.
I love that, and I believe it, too.
Yeah.
I do. Absolutely.
Tom, what about you? Have you perceived or recognized some difference in the sales process, or is it different today than it was when you started?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I remember when I started, we had computers, but we didn't have PCs or laptops.
Right.
So, yeah, that's old school. But one of the things that I've noticed, and it accelerated significantly with the pandemic, was still great to go out and see customers, but a lot of times customers, it really expect the majority of your communication to be remote, both with video conferencing and with email. And those types of things. There's a lot of times I may meet with a customer one time, then do the rest of it over electronic communication, where that was something that was unheard of when I started, and frankly was kind of still unheard of till the pandemic really changed that a lot. So I guess, and that frankly makes us more productive. But you got to be careful because you still need to go out and see people. And you can't just sit behind a desk and fire off emails. A lot of customers, though, are expecting you to build that relationship, but that may be very much so over, a webinar or, video conference versus doing it in, and I deal with customers all across the country, and they're not expecting me to go and see them very frequently.
So there's a place for video, but the in-person meeting is still important.
Well, I'll give an example. I was working with a customer, and we were communicating by email back and forth. And then I said, well, let me just come out and meet you, and let's kind of walk through this setup. And, what they were talking with me was doing probably a small project. Well, when I was done with that, the project had morphed into probably 5 times the size of the project, because me being there with them and seeing the challenges that they were having and what they needed I would have never been able to do that unless I had been on site and saw and so the customer a lot of times doesn't realize the expertise that we can bring to help them. They don't realize what they can benefit from. So if you're just talking to them about what they think they need, a lot of times they don't really know, maybe they don't really know the depth and the breadth of Hiscall and what we can bring to solve their issues. And so that's kind of one of those things, is sometimes these remote conversations don't get to uncover all the needs that they have. And that really is best done on site, walking around, looking about this and saying, hey, why are you doing that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Technology evolves in funny ways sometimes. People that are in business for themselves and they're doing what they know to do. Technology may not be their primary focus, but they need to do something. They figure out a way to make it happen, but it might not be the best way, and they don't always know what they need. And
sure.
So uncovering that in person is a lot easier than doing that over the phone and video. Lori, do you see a change in the sales process and in the way that you sell?
Well, I mean, I'm like Tom. I do like to meet someone in person, because what they think they need may not be, what I can uncover. And, by me walking around and looking at how their offices are set up or such, I mean, and we do sell such a variety of things that customers do not know. And, I mean, we'll go around and see that they've got digital signage up. And, hey, we do that. We're kind of a one-stop shop for everything, so anything low voltage. So that would, really helps us to determine what else we might be able to help the customer with.
So true. Very good point. Do you feel like sales is still heavy relationship, or does the relationship matter less?
I really think it depends on the relationship that you have with a customer. And what I always say is, and I've told some of the newer people, I have a lot of deep relationships being in the community for a long, long time. I'm definitely invested in the area. I try to I volunteer a lot, so I do have a lot of those connections. But for me personally, I would almost rather sell to a stranger that becomes a friend than to try to sell a personal relationship, because when you sell to someone you know personally, it becomes personal. So I've often said, Chuck, to some of the newer people, what I like about Hiscall, and I'll go there first, is that we all are doing, and the sales consultants, we're all doing the same job for Hiscall, but we all do it in a different manner. So when I sit and talk with the newer sales folks, I always am clear to tell them that they will have to pick and choose the way their sales type. But for me personally, I would rather sell to almost a stranger that becomes a friend than to use my personal relationships to sell. So,
what's the reason for that?
Well, for oftentimes, if I sell to somebody I personally know, and then sometimes it's out of their control and it becomes a no, it's hard for me not to take that as personal.
Okay.
As someone I've worked with and I've consulted with and we've designed something for, and then it's either a yes or no. For me, that's a lot easier not to take personally. So,
Sure. Okay.
And then, but because our job is full of rejection and it's full of those ayes and, the yeses and the nos. Recently I had some really nice wins, but it's almost tend to focus on, or just, I think that's human nature. You tend to focus on the one that got away versus the one that you got. So I think we need to do a better job, and I remind myself of that daily, is to celebrate the wins and let the losses roll off.
That brings up something that I wanted to talk about today.
Okay.
The sales process involves a lot of rejection. We talked about that on the last episode with Mike, and those guys are new to Hiscall, new to the industry in some cases. They're doing a lot of cold calling. You guys have been in the industry longer than they have. You've got an established customer base. You got people you've been working with for a long time. Do you still do a lot of cold calling?
I think for me personally, it's always a challenge. So if I go to a new area, I always want to meet somebody new in that area. It's just something I've always done in my career, is to try to find somebody that doesn't know the Hiscall story. We do a lot of trade shows. So I was just at a trade show this week with about 400 attendees, and so I got to tell the Hiscall story to maybe 100 new folks that weren't familiar with us, vendors and customers alike. So I enjoy sharing the story of Hiscall to new people and doing new things, and that's the way to get the word out, because you never know what that's going to turn around, and eventually they become a partner with Hiscall as well.
Sure. Okay.
I've been doing this a while. I have some established customers that keep me pretty busy. But I do target clients and customers, and especially I think one of the most effective is at a trade show or something like that where I attend. And so may not be going, down the street and knocking on a door, but am actively reaching out to and establishing connections with potential clients all the time. We have something that many, many customers need. Therefore, it's pretty easy to, run across somebody who's going to need something and offer it to them.
Lori, what do you think?
Well, I'm still in the position where I definitely have to cold call. I try to do that more for, making appointments, and then maybe just cold calling around those particular appointments. And I do use my relationships, and they're more business relationships, I think, than personal, although they do become personal, with time. But I try to, get referrals from them, or, ask them to, give me referrals. And one leads to another. So, if you've got a happy customer, then, that gives you a little one up when you go and meet with somebody else if they know the person that you were dealing with. So that's kind of how I try to work it.
Okay.
I can definitely speak to that, Chuck, because before Lori came here to work at Hiscall, we had a relationship where she was a vendor. and then I was the salesperson. And so we worked together a lot of that. And I could tell that that was definitely a key for her, is using those referrals, working smarter, not harder, and, helping, because I might have connections to 10 businesses and she does a good job for one of my customers. It wasn't hard for me to recommend her because it was something that I knew my customer was going to be taken care of when I passed that on to her.
Yeah, good, good. So in understanding cold calling and relationships and the sales process involves a lot of rejection. I mean, you just don't get a yes every time for a variety of reasons. And after our last episode, I was thinking about, how do you manage that? How do you manage the rejection? And Patricia, you touched on something that I was interested in. How do you not take it personally? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with rejection? How do you not take it personally?
Practice, I would say. So my entire career has been in sales, really, and I've been selling since kindergarten. So I think it was a kind of a challenge for me that I would just continue to go back and try to get that yes. And so back in the 90s and the early 2000s, sales training was a huge part. Well, I've been to tons of sales training on rejection, and it's just law of averages. If only 1 out of 10 people say yes, I know I got to have 9 no's to get to my yes. And I kind of have that mantra playing in my head all the time. Like, if somebody says no, well, the next person hopefully is going to say yes. Or if I know I've done the right thing, and, that we've done the right thing at Hiscall, that we've quoted it correctly, that I know that we do a good job, because customer service is so important to us. Even when they say no, I have often had them have to come back in the full circle and come back around because they've maybe made a choice, it didn't work out, and we're always here to kind of help them navigate that process as well, where maybe it was a no, and it's easier to take that rejection because I have countless opportunities that have been no that eventually became yeses and became clients. So I kind of just optimistically hold on to that hope as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Lori, what about you?
Well, I definitely try not to take it personally, because that would just, put you in a sour type mood but what I look at it is, if it's one that is, a large one that I've been working on, I mean, obviously, if you put a lot of time and effort into it, it does, hurt feelings a little bit, but somebody that I've built a relationship with, I try to keep it going. I try to touch base with them every once in a while. And like Patricia said, I've had those customers come back to me. So you really don't ever just completely call it a wash, because you never know when they're going to come back. You don't want to burn bridges. So right. I try not to take it personally, but, sometimes it does hurt a little bit, but I just, like she said, you do 10, one of them is going to do it and the rest of them aren't. So just have to keep moving forward.
Yeah. Tom, what about you? What do you think about, or how do you deal with rejection and not taking it personally? And,
it really depends on the reason for the rejection. Some things you may take a little more personally than others. If you have a longtime customer that you feel like you've got a good relationship with, and then they replace what you've been supporting with them and don't even give you really an opportunity to talk to them about, an updated version of it or the latest technology that would replace that. Frankly, that hurts a little more. If a customer meets with you and maybe what they need, Hiscall's not the best fit. Hiscall's rarely not a good fit, but every now and then. But yeah, so they're like, hey, this technology can do this. Had a particular company that, they were looking at a phone system, and they've been a long-time customer of ours. They were looking to update. Everything was going well. And then their corporate software that ran their entire company, they had an integration that nobody else. It was exclusive to one manufacturer. We don't sell that manufacturer. So, I didn't take it personally. They don't take it personally. Matter of fact, they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars with us since then, not on their telephony, but on a lot of other stuff. So that relationship continued to go, and so I did not take it personally because that was out of my hands. But, you do have some of those where you work with them, and they make a business decision for whatever reason. You don't think it's the best business decision, but, maybe you honor that business decision. You keep in touch with them. And the main thing you're trying to do is you are trying to use the gifts and strengths of your engineering team and the gifts and strengths of your experience to give them the best possible solution. If they don't think it's the best possible solution, I don't take it personally, because that means I didn't either uncover some need or something. So I kind of point that back to me.
Yep.
In many ways, there's some unspoken thing, and I can still have a great relationship with them. And, sometimes customers make a bad decision. Sometimes you just didn't uncover what was needed, even though you had a great relationship with them. So I think there's a lot of variables in that, but by and large, I rarely take it personal unless it's a customer who I thought I had a good relationship with, and they just, for whatever reason, and then I've had some customers come back and say, hey, I didn't engage you for this because X, Y, Z. And then I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that makes complete sense. It's kind of out of your hands or what have you.
Sure. Okay. I can see where it would be hard. Do you have to kind of psych yourself up when you're going into, Patricia, you talked about kind of 9 and number 9 no's, and you kind of tell yourself that all the time, 9 no's, well, next one's a yes.
Right.
Is that kind of a mental thing you go through? You've got to go into every deal expecting to win, I think. Do you? I mean,
sure. I mean, I think it definitely takes, or it helps to have an optimistic outlook. And I definitely have been very fortunate, just because my work ethic is that I can sell from abundancy instead of scarcity. What do you
mean by that?
So if you're selling, and the more you can generate, the more opportunities, the more customers that you can go see, the law of averages, or you're going to have some type of business. So if you're selling and your mental state is from abundancy, from this is just, you're continuing to sell and be successful, versus I haven't sold anything in 2 months and I really need to sell something.
Right. I'm tracking.
So.
Desperate.
Yeah, desperate. So, and you can spot those from a mile away. And with Hiscall, our culture here is fantastic. So, and I know that Lori can probably really speak to this, coming from something she probably didn't believe it was going to be this good. Our culture at Hiscall is to do right by the customer, to make sure that we have everything in place to be successful for the customer with our engineering teams, and from the first point of contact all the way through installation. And then just that the rest of it will take care of itself. So if we're all doing that and creating those opportunities for our team, that it will work out in the end.
Good. We have to put our head down at night feeling like we've done the right thing, we've presented the best solution, and we've taken good care of the customer. That helps move us along, and we've got good support.
That makes a rejection go so easy. I mean, if you've got a lot to work on, somebody rejecting, frankly, a rejection means you don't have to work on them anymore.
Right.
You move on.
Because I've got a list of other stuff that's got to be done, and I don't have enough hours in the day to do the work I've got now. So that rejection is actually, because rejection and signing an agreement actually provides the same functionality. It allows me to go work on something else.
It's a decision.
It's
right.
And so I'll give you an example. I was meeting with a customer Tuesday night. They had an open house, and it was a multi-million-dollar project, and we were $150,000 of it. The guy was a car dealership, and the guy who was the regional manager for all of General Motors came up and said to me, he said, it's been a long time, and I don't think have I ever had a more professional, timely, and quality job done by an organization.
Wow. Good.
And this is a guy who opens GM dealerships all across the eastern United States. And he said, I've never had one go for what you guys did better. That's impressive.
That
very
impressive.
Impressive.
Confidence, doesn't it?
Oh gosh, it says okay, and I think they don't see it as often now as the quality work and quality service and quality implementation is not the norm as much as it used to be. There's a lack of talent of people doing implementations. There's a lack of customer focus. It's really an opportunity for Hiscall to shine for those customers who prize it.
That's so true. And, in the world we're living in, that common decency, common courtesy, some of that's kind of going out the window in the mainstream. But I feel like at Hiscall, that's still very much present, doing the right thing for our customers. 100% customer satisfaction. That's what I tell people. It's pretty good to work for a guy who doesn't believe that customer satisfied until they're completely satisfied, not just halfway, not just okay. He wants them to be satisfied. So that's a really good spot to work, because I know we'll do what it takes to get a customer there.
And I agree. I mean, the customer service with Hiscall is just phenomenal. And I've never experienced that before with my years at I won't even say where, but I mean, really, I'm able with confidence to sell to a customer and know that if they pick up the phone, they'll get instant help, and that to me is such a relief, and so gives you more of a positive sales experience, knowing that on the back end, that customer is going to be taken care of. So,
yeah, I appreciate that. Well, let's kind of wrap up today. It's been a good conversation. I kind of wanted to wrap up with this. So Patricia's kind of told us she was in the card business. Eskimo cards, right? Stationery or Eskimo.
Yeah, Eskimo cards.
Eskimo cards. Mm-hmm. But tell our listeners something that we might not know about you.
You're looking at me.
Well, yeah, whoever wants to go first.
I like cars.
Mm-hmm. You do like cars.
And I normally have a sports car of some sort. So
have you got a convertible right now?
I have a BMW M3 convertible with a 4.4-liter V8 that sounds amazing.
All right.
Whatever that means, Chet. Yeah, for those of us who aren't car people.
Means don't get in the car with Tom.
Okay. I gotcha.
Or hold on if you do.
Yeah. And if anybody's been on a video conference with me, they realize I probably like to ski because I have both water and snow skis.
That is true. Yep. Lori, what about you?
Well, we've got a place at the river, so we also like to ski and do some boating. And then I am still a personal trainer. I do that more over the phone now, help people with diet plans and exercise plans. But I used to do it, actually go and meet people and either at their homes or gyms or whatever to do personal training.
Right.
So,
I knew that, but I had forgotten that.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting that you're still doing it. Glad to hear that. Patricia, anything else, or is that enough?
Enough a tidbit. Well, I don't know if we've spoken about it before, but I have two boys, 20 and 16, and they're into bass fishing. So for the last 6 years, I've been the director of the high school bass fishing team, something I never thought I would do. And
that's cool, though.
I have a couple more years to go, and so I probably had over 75 kids that have come through the program, and some are at college on fishing scholarship. So
much fun.
Doing what your kids love, for them, it means a lot. And so it's been a fun experience.
You've probably got fishing in your agenda this weekend, don't you?
That's right. Headed to Gunnersville soon. So my oldest is in a college tournament. So
awesome. Shout
out to Bethel, and hopefully they're doing well today.
Good stuff. Well, thank you for sharing this morning. Thank you for sharing with our listeners on the podcast. Thank you for all you do in getting out and finding new opportunities, new leads, new customers. It's a lot of work. And I know that it is, but thank you for doing it. We'll wrap up our podcast today. I hope you know, we wrap up the podcast with some encouraging words every time. You remember what those are?
Something just believe.
Be not afraid, but believe.
Yep. Don't be afraid, only believe.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the Hiscall Technology Podcast. Subscribe to this podcast so you can stay up to date with today's business communication trends. To learn more about Hiscall solutions for your business needs or to listen to previous podcasts, visit us at our website, hiscall.com.